Hi everyone. So today's agenda is learning about how to do serialization and deserialization in Apex, but we are going to do this in two different ways. So what do I mean by two different ways? So these are the two JSONs that I've created. Now you know that we serialize and deserialize JSON, right? Either we serialize the string into a JSON format or we get the that is called serialization, or we get the JSON string. Like this is basically the JSON string. We get that and convert that into the records of our objects in our OR. So that is what we are going to do. Now, when I say two ways, what does it mean? The first one, you could see that both of them are like JSON. But in the first one that you see, so let me actually go to my org and show you to illustrate the difference properly. Now I have account record. Within account object, I have a child object called contact point email. Both of them are standard objects, as you know. In contact point email, we have two records. So in my JSON, I want to send the ID and name of this particular account along with its child contact point emails, which is this and this. Now, in contact point email, if I come, right, which two fields am I going to send of contact point email? One is email address, which is this one, and the type. So there is a custom field called type, email type. Okay, so I'm going to send email address and email type. Now in my JSON, you see there are two different types of JSON. In one, we have the section for contact point email and account. In other also, we have a section for contact point email and for account. But the difference that you notice here is in the second JSON payload that we have, it is actually using the field name that I have in my object. So the field name in my object that I showed you was email address and email type. So that is email underscore type underscore underscore C, right? So it is using the object name and field value, not object name. Object name is something that I have defined it to use it in the way I want to, because here you see account, I've named it ACC rather than the account. But the field names, as you see, like here you see name and ID, here you see email address, email type. It is exactly whatever the API name of field we have on the object. But over here, when you see, it is according to my choice. This is not the name of that, this is not the API name of that field on the contact point email object, right? Even for account, when you see ID and name, that is not the actual field name in the account, right? In account we have ID and we have name, not account name and ACC ID, right? So these are the two different ways in which we are going to serialize. And then I'll show you, if you get such kind of a JSON as the input, then how do you serialize it into the objects records? So let's quickly begin. So like I showed you, there is this account called test account, and there are two email addresses in this, abc@abc.com, aaa@bbb.com. Okay. Now I want to create a JSON with this particular account name and ID, and whichever contact point email records are there, I want to do that. Now, like I showed you, there are two types of JSON. The first one is like this, where these fields that will go. And by the way, let me also tell you, why do we have these two different kind of things? Now, a third party system that might be receiving a JSON from you might have certain requirements. If they are okay to have, underscore underscore C at the end, which is the field API name in Salesforce, then you can send them in this format. If they are not okay to have underscore underscore C in the field name, in the property name, then you can create it according to yourself. So let's start. I'm starting with this kind of a JSON where you will define what would be the name of the fields that you are sending rather than using the API field names of the fields in Salesforce. So for that, I have created a DTO class. Normally, we call it DTO. And by the way, this tool where I'm viewing this is called Online JSON Viewer. That is where I view the JSON. I'll show you when I actually generate the output. But for now, let's see it. So we want it in this way. So you see there is a section for contact point email and we have account name and account ID. So what am I supposed to do? The very first thing is I'm going to create a wrapper class. So because we have contact point email, I'll create a wrapper class for contact point email. And because we have account, so I'll create a wrapper class for account. Now in contact point email, what are we showing? CPE underscore type and CPE underscore email. So I'm going to define two public properties inside my contact point email. Get set is not required. Only if you're using a visual force page or something, you can use get set. And let's create a constructor for this wrapper class. I created a constructor and all I'm doing is just placing null for now. Now let's create the wrapper class of our account. So in this wrapper class, I'm going to send three properties, right? Like you can see here, account name, account ID, and the third one is the list of contact point emails. So all these three are the properties of accounts. So let's create three properties for accounts. The one is called string account name, other is the ID, and the third one is the list of contact point emails. Now, why have I written list of wrapper CP is because whatever instance of this class we are going to have, we are going to send the list of those instances. So that is why I took this as the list type, this class as the list type, and we are going to have a list of that particular class, okay? Because that is the inner property, like I told, these three. So that's what I've done. Now let's create a constructor for the wrapper account. In this, what I'm going to do is account name and ID, they are string. So I'm just going to pass null to it for now. And contact point emails that we have, that is a list of this other wrapper class. That list equal to the parameter. We'll be passing a parameter when we call this class. Okay. So that time we are going to pass the list of contact point emails into this property of the wrapper account. Now let's write the actual class. Now in my actual class, I'm going to create a method called create JSON. Right? Now in this method, I'm going to pass a particular account ID for which I want the account name, account ID, and its child contact point emails. Now, let's first do a for loop for getting all the contact point emails with this particular account ID being the parent ID. So I'll say select email address, email type from contact point email, where parent ID is equal to the current account ID. As and when we get this, this is not, yeah, this is needed actually. Okay, now what have I done here is, because in this wrapper account, we want to pass a list of wrapper CPE, right? Which is list of this one. So I am creating a list of that particular wrapper class and keeping, okay? Because we are from inside that same class, we don't need to write test DTO class dot wrapper CPE, right? Because we are inside that class only. So I can just write wrapper CPE. So I'll create an instance of that, and I mean the list of instances of that. Now I'm getting all the contact point email, and I'm creating an instance of this particular class. So I created an object of that class, and in that object, I have two fields or two properties, CPE email and CPE type. So what I'm going to do is, in the object of this dot that particular property equal to this contact point email that I'm getting from my Salesforce database, and type property of that particular wrapper class is equal to the type that I'm getting from contact point email in my Salesforce. And I'm creating a list of this particular thing, which is this one. And I'm adding all the contact point emails there. Now, the next thing is, I'll query the account because I want the ID and name both, right? So I'm going to say account, give me that particular account whose ID is equal to this ID. Now I'm going to create an instance of wrapper account, just like we did here for the wrapper contact point email, right? Similarly, I'm going to create an instance for wrapper account. But for wrapper account, like you see, in the constructor, we are passing a parameter, right? We are passing the list of wrapper contact point email. So this list that I created here of the wrapper contact point email, CPE list of wrapper contact point email, in which I inserted all the contact point emails, I'm going to pass that list as the parameter of that particular constructor. So this line here is going to call the wrapper accounts constructor and put this value inside this. And so this will put inside contact point emails. Now there are other two properties also, like account name and account ID. So let's put that as well. So I would, here how we did, right? For CPEW, like we put the other two properties. Similarly, we are going to do that for this one. Here I'll say ACC dot name, and here I'll say ACC dot ID. So this way we have prepared the entire structure. Now is the last step, which is serializing. So let's write the last step. This is the output. So I'm just going to call this statement called JSON.serialize, and I'm going to put account, wrapper accounts instance over here, because this wrapper accounts instance is having my account ID, account name, and the list of contact point emails. So let me save it here. Okay. And now the time to see the output. I'm going to say test DTO class dot create JSON, copy the ID of this account and paste it here. Let me delete all the unnecessary logs, and I'm going to execute. Let me only pick the JSON part. Now, whenever I want to view this, like, let's say this JSON output, I'm going to type online JSON viewer. And there's this tool where you can go and see a neater version of the JSON. Right now, when I put it, it's coming in a straight line like this, which I cannot understand quite well. So I paste the code here, and then there is a format button. So it shows a cleaner version. So now you see this is the JSON that we are passing. We are saying account name, account ID, contact point, email type, and email, right? So this is the parent account and these are the child emails. Now, this way when you do, and the other system to which you are passing the JSON, they tell you that, you know what, I don't want the name of the field to be CP underscore type. I want it to be contact point email type, the entire word written. So all you need to do then is come here and change the name of the property. That's it. So yeah, of course, like here also you need to change wherever you are referring it, but you could change it. So let's say I'll change it for one of them and show you. Contact point email. And we are referring it here as well. So I would make it contact point email. Okay, let's pick the log. You see now it says contact point email instead of CP underscore type. So that's how simple it is. You just have to change it like that. Now let's go to the other type of a JSON, which is this one, wherein like the other system where you are passing the JSON, they might like it's quite likely that they'll be ignoring this part. They won't consider this. But one thing is, for a Salesforce developer, it would be a neater way to do it in this way, because when you deserialize also, you can directly deserialize, which I'll show you. And you can use the API name of the fields over here. And the way how you serialize is also a little different. So let me show you. So let's quickly jump to that. So let's go to the other type of JSON now, for which I've created one more class called public class DTO, test DTO class 2. Again, because we are going to send account with its child contact point emails. So we need to create a wrapper class for account. So let's quickly do that. Okay. Now this time we do not need to create a contact point emails wrapper because we are directly going to use the object. So we are going to have account ID and name, right? That is something that we need. So first of all, I'm creating a property for account. So you might have noticed the difference. Over here in my wrapper class for account, I was saying explicitly account name and account ID and string, right? But here I'm just saying the instance of account object. Like I'm creating an object of account, yeah, a subject type. Now, the next thing is we want to have list of contact point emails as well, right? So the next thing that I'm going to do is create a list of contact point emails, because this is also something that I want to send. Now let me create a constructor. This time the constructor would be something like this. I'm going to pass the account record which I received as a parameter and the list of contact point emails. That's what I'm going to pass. Okay. And here, whatever name I've given over here would be visible in my, like what I mean to say is, I've given the name as contact point emails. So this section is called contact point emails. I've given the name as account here for the account section. So that's why for account section, the name is ACC. You can give it whatever you want to. Okay. So this is about our wrapper class. Now, so here, this is the major difference that I'm directly using the object names instead of creating each and every property separately, right? So as you might have understood, it's so much easier to make it this way. Now let's create the create JSON method over here as well. So I've created a JSON. Let me create a list of contact point email again. In that list, I'm going to, like, first of all, I'm going to query all the contact point emails where the parent ID is the current account ID and iterate through it and put each and every record of contact point email in that list. That is what I'm doing here. Next is I'm going to query account. So let us query account. Now we've got the account ID and name. So whatever you see in this, okay, in account, like let's say you are seeing ID and name, right? That depends on what all you are sending or what all you are querying. So here I'm only querying ID and name. If you query phone or anything else, that would also appear in that JSON. Now let's create an instance of our wrapper account. So here I am creating an instance of my wrapper account. My constructor has two parameters. So I'm passing two parameters. One is the account record that I'm passing, and one is the list that I'm passing. Okay. So that's it. And our final step is to serialize this JSON. So let's quickly serialize this one. Okay. Now we are going to query the same account, but the class this time is testDTO class 2. So let's execute this. Now it's not showing me the entire log. I'll just download it. Remove the extra part and just format it. So now you can see there is a section for contact point emails and there is a section for account. But this time I had not explicitly mentioned each and every field of account, email, contact point email or account. It is whatever I've queried over here. Here I had queried the email address and email type, and here I had queried ID and name. So that's the only information you are seeing over here. So this is about serialization. Now let's come to the deserialization. So there are two types of outputs, right? One is this kind of output, other is this kind of a JSON, right? Now let's take the first one first. I'm going to deserialize this particular output. I copied this output in the notepad, and now let's see how to deserialize it. So what am I going to do is, first of all, I need to have the JSON string. This JSON string, as you see, is what we had got the output over here, right? I've just copied that same output in one line and put it inside the JSON string. Now, what I need to see is from this JSON string, now I want to retrieve my account records, name and ID. So how can I do that? I need to deserialize. And what is the syntax for that is, first of all, what class is this? Test DTO class, right? So that's the first thing that I'm going to write. Now inside that, we have two wrappers, right? One is the wrapper account and other is wrapper contact point email. So first I want to get all the properties of this wrapper account. So we have three properties in that: wrapper account name and account ID. First of all, to go inside that, I need to first retrieve this. So I would say TDO class dot wrapper account. And I'm going to create an instance of that equals. We are going to typecast this output, deserialized output, into a particular type, right? So I'm going to convert it into this type. Now, next thing is I'm going to say JSON.deserialize. And there are two parameters in this. What are you converting? What are you deserializing? That's the first parameter. And the second parameter is to what kind of a object type you are converting this into. So we are converting this into test DTO class dot wrapper account. And then there is a keyword dot class which you need to mention. Now let's see. We get the TDO or not. So you see, we get everything inside the TDO. But I just want to view the account name and account ID. So what am I going to do is, the next thing is, within TDO, I have account name and account ID. So all I need to do is whatever the property name I've given in wrapper class, I'm just going to access that. So we have the account name and we have the account ID. Okay. Now I want to see all the contact point emails as well. So now how do I do that? For that, we need to iterate through the list because it's a list. It's not a single record, right? So we need to iterate for it. Now, how do we do that is, we are going to create a for loop. This time we are not using the wrapper account. I mean, we are going through it, but the result that we are going to get out of it, the output that we want, are all the properties of this particular wrapper class, right? So that is why I'm going to say that the output that I'm going to get is of this type. Test DTO class, which is this, dot wrapper CPE, which is this wrapper class, right? And I'm going to create an instance of it. Now, every time that I loop through, I'm going to save that particular record in this temporary instance. Now, what am I going to loop through? So I'm going to loop through wrapper accounts, contact point emails property that I've listed here, because that contains the list of this particular wrapper class. So I'm going to say TDO class dot wrapper account dot contact point emails. But for TDO class dot DTO class dot wrapper account, I already have the instance which is TDO. So I'm just going to say TDO dot and this property, which is contact point emails. And I'm going to iterate the results into this and just display that. So let's check that. So here you see, this is the account name and ID. And these are the two contact point emails. So this is how we deserialize the first kind of JSON, which is this. Now let's deserialize the second kind of JSON, which is this. Again, for that, we might need JSON string. So I have copied this particular JSON over here. Now, next is again, now here we just have one wrapper class, right? We just have wrapper account. We don't have wrapper contact point email, if you remember, right? We have just made one wrapper class. So I want to access this DTO class 2 dot wrapper account. So let's write it. And let's see the account details. Also, I want to see the contact point emails, right? Now this time, because there is no wrapper inside, we have directly used the list of contact point email, right? So the each and every record that I'm going to get, I can store it in the standard contact point email itself, right? So I'll say contact point email, CPE. And what am I going to get? TDO. So I reached till here, like test TDO class 2 dot wrapper account dot contact point emails. So for test DTO 2 dot wrapper account, I already have this instance. So I'll just say TDO dot. I want to iterate through the list of contact point emails. So I'm going to copy this property, put it here. And just access this. Now you see we have the account ID and name, and it is directly mapped into the ID and name field of the account. If you want, you can insert this record, update this record, or do whatever further. So let's say I want to update this record or insert it in Salesforce, then all I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's say, create a contact point, emails, CE equals new contact point, email, CE dot email address equals. Here what we are getting, we need to write that CPE dot email address and so on. And just at the end, either insert it or put it in the list, and then outside the for loop, just insert it. So this was about deserializing the other type of output, which is this one. So yeah, we have deserialized it, and you can see the email address and email type __ C, which is the API name of the field in the contact point email object. So this is about how to serialize, deserialize in Apex. And if this video helped, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.